It always starts with a sentence you think you misheard, a tiny pause, a breath that somehow feels heavier than the room itself. And then Andrei says it, not in anger, not in explosion, but in that flat, resolved tone that means the decision was made long before the camera started rolling. I want a divorce. Elizabeth's face doesn't even break at first. It folds. Like every muscle is trying to keep her from falling apart on national television. She asks him to repeat it, not because she didn't hear, but because she can't understand how the man who moved countries, married her, built a family with her, is suddenly speaking like a stranger. Andrei has never been subtle, but this is different. This isn't the bark of frustration fans are used to. This is a man who ran out of fight, quietly, slowly, and alone. And as soon as he says it, everything around them stops being a room and becomes a stage. A confession. A fracture that's been forming off camera for months without anyone noticing. This is the moment where the storyline detonates. Because America only sees the edited version of their relationship. The Instagram photos, the TikTok dances with their daughter, the well-lit kitchen where they laugh over coffee. What they don't see are the micro silences. The nights when he slept on the far edge of the bed. The way Elizabeth kept performing happiness, even when she felt the emotional temperature dropping degree by degree. Andrei says he's done. But he doesn't give the why, not fully. And that's where the real hook begins. Was it the money pressure? In-laws whispering that he was taking advantage? A job that never felt secure enough? Or the constant expectation that he be the stoic provider for a family that never fully trusted him? Was it identity fatigue, the immigrant pressure cooker? The unspoken fear that no matter how hard he tried, he'd always be the outsider, the intruder, the one whose accent made him a target? Or was it the family interference, something viewers always suspected but never fully understood? The comments, the tension, the way every disagreement somehow turned into a Castrovet family referendum? And then there's the biggest fracture, the silence, the slow withdrawal, the quiet resentment that builds when someone feels unheard for so long they stop speaking altogether. Elizabeth is still crying, trying to grab onto something, an explanation, a moment, a promise, but Andrei gives her nothing. Not out of cruelty, but because he's empty. This isn't rage. This is resignation. And that's what makes it so devastating. No screaming, no dramatic walkout, just a man who reached the end of a rope no one else noticed he was holding. And now the open loops explode all at once. From the outside, Andrei and Elizabeth looked like the couple who finally figured it out. A house, a baby, stable jobs, happy family outings, all polished into a digestible brand for viewers scrolling past their posts. But behind that curated calm was a slow, grinding erosion that didn't happen in big explosions, but in tiny, repeated moments that never made it into the final cut. The first cracks appeared in the most ordinary places. Overly sharp replies during confessionals, a stiffness in scenes where they were supposed to be celebrating milestones, and small disagreements that seemed harmless but carried the weight of unresolved tension. Viewers saw them argue about work permits, finances, and family boundaries, all aired openly on the show. Yet the real fatigue came from everything outside the episodes. Because living on reality TV isn't just about filming. It's about always performing. Every smile must look natural. Every argument must be camera appropriate, and every private moment comes with the knowledge that millions will eventually judge it. Over time, this creates a double life, the screen version and the one that exists only in the quiet hours when filming stops. Elizabeth, who grew up in a large expressive family, adapted easily to the rhythm of being on. She could laugh through tension, reset her emotions quickly, and move forward. Andrei, however, never quite adjusted to the constant eyes on him. Viewers have seen this tension play out in multiple seasons. Moments where he expresses frustration at being misunderstood, misrepresented, or reduced to a stereotype. Those aired confrontations are small windows into a much larger psychological strain. The pressure of being judged in a country where he is already fighting to belong. Their brand online projected unity, matching outfits with their daughter, casual home vlogs, skits, and reels that showed a playful dynamic. But what fans didn't see was how much work it took to maintain that illusion when real stress was building underneath. Job insecurity, immigration hurdles, family tensions that never fully resolved, and the exhaustion of juggling public storytelling with private disagreements. As the cracks widened, their emotional rhythms started moving out of sync. Elizabeth tried to fix things by doubling down on positivity. More bonding activities, more attempts to create shared memories, more reassurance. Andrei responded the opposite way, by shutting down, limiting conversations, avoiding long discussions that might be filmed or repeated later. The quiet moments became the most telling. Scenes where he answered in short phrases, footage where he looked tired, distant, almost emotionally checked out. You could see it in his body language too, the way he leaned away during difficult talks or stared at the floor when family conflicts resurfaced. These weren't dramatic television fights. They were micro withdrawals, slow and steady. And when a partner goes quiet long enough, the silence stops being peaceful. It becomes a warning. Because there was one night, one conversation off camera, where Elizabeth realized the silence wasn't just distance. It was danger. A moment where she understood that if she couldn't get him talking again, she might lose him entirely. If you've watched their journey across multiple seasons, you already know that Andrei and Elizabeth's relationship has never existed in a vacuum. It has always lived inside the gravitational pull of the Castrovet family, a force that provides support, opportunity, conflict, and chaos, usually all at the same time. And while some families eventually cool down after the cameras stop rolling, theirs never really did. The tension simply shifted shape. On screen, viewers saw the big conflicts: arguments over business, disagreements about trust, debates about loyalty, and explosive moments that became fan-favorite clips. Chuck trying to keep everyone calm, Becky and Jen voicing resentment, Andrei feeling ganged up on, Elizabeth caught in the middle, defending her husband while trying not to alienate her siblings. These conflicts weren't one-episode issues. They stretched across seasons, storylines, and even family ventures. But behind those public clashes was a quieter, long-term resentment that never fully healed. Small comments became emotional landmines. Old disagreements turned into running jokes that weren't funny anymore. Even positive moments felt fragile, like everyone was pretending stability existed as long as no one brought up the past. Andrei has always been portrayed as strong-willed, straightforward, and unapologetic. Qualities that made him compelling TV, but also made blending into a new family incredibly difficult. From his perspective, the pushback was constant, questioning his intentions, scrutinizing his decisions, and challenging his role in Elizabeth's life. From the family's side, there was the fear of losing their daughter, their sister, to someone they didn't fully understand. No villains, just clashing expectations, layered over cultural differences and the pressure cooker of televised relationships. Elizabeth, raised in a close-knit dynamic, spent years trying to be the bridge. She defended Andrei on camera, mediated arguments off camera, and tried to keep the family gatherings functional enough for everyone to get through the day. But the emotional toll of being the fixer eventually grew heavier than she realized. Resentment doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it shows up as exhaustion. As years went on, the family tension didn't disappear. It simply became background noise. And when tension becomes familiar, people stop noticing how it shapes them. Andrei grew more guarded. Elizabeth grew more anxious. Their conversation shifted from future building to maintaining peace. And when a couple spends more energy surviving the room than supporting each other, cracks start forming in places no one expects. Fans often ask, why didn't they just walk away from the drama? Why didn't they set boundaries? Because by the time they realized how deep the resentment ran, they were already operating in survival mode, emotionally, financially, and socially. Their family was also their storyline, their support system, their conflict engine, and sometimes their pressure point. And now comes the question that neither of them wants to say out loud. the one that's been quietly shaping every argument. For years, one of the most consistent undercurrents in Andrei and Elizabeth's journey has been something viewers rarely discuss openly: the immigration pressure loop. Anyone who watched their earlier seasons remembers how central Andrei's residency, work authorization, and long-term stability were to the storyline. It wasn't a side detail. It shaped his decisions, his behavior, and the way he navigated both family conflict and married life. On the show, we saw him repeatedly express fear about being unable to work, waiting for paperwork, and feeling judged for not contributing enough. Those weren't just plot points, they were windows into what it feels like to build a life in a new country while being evaluated by everyone around you. And when immigration becomes part of a marriage, it doesn't just affect legal status, it affects identity. For Andrei, the pressure created a loop that never fully broke. Fear of losing stability, tension in the relationship, attempts to control situations, more conflict, increased fear. This wasn't about him being domineering for drama. It was the natural reaction of someone who didn't feel fully safe. If your right to live with your family feels conditional, every argument feels higher stakes. Every setback feels like the ground cracking under your feet. And every disapproving look from your in-laws feels like a threat to the life you're trying to keep together. When the show documented his struggle to get approved for work, to prove himself as a provider, or to be accepted by Elizabeth's family, viewers saw the surface-level frustration, the intensity, the defensiveness, the pride. But beneath that was a deeper emotional tension, the fear that he wasn't enough and that the system could take everything at any time. And emotional fear often turns into controlling behavior, not in an abusive sense, but in the form of tightening routines, needing structure, demanding clarity, or becoming hyper-focused on stability. For Andrei, this showed up as strong opinions on finances, boundaries with the family, and the constant push to secure their future. It was his way of regaining a sense of ground beneath his feet. Elizabeth understood it at first. She even defended it. But over time, the weight of carrying someone else's fear became exhausting. When every decision, big or small, is filtered through the lens of, how does this affect our stability? The relationship stops breathing. Conversations become strategy sessions. Moments of joy feel interrupted by logistical concerns. And the partner living under immigration scrutiny becomes consumed by survival. By the time Andrei finally received more stability, something celebrated on the show, the emotional habits he built during uncertainty didn't simply disappear. Fear leaves a residue. It can linger in the form of silence, withdrawal, or an unwillingness to be vulnerable. And that's where the reflective tone of their story sharpens. Because according to what Elizabeth hinted in confessionals, there came a moment, a specific comment, a specific argument, when she realized Andrei wasn't reacting from fear anymore. He was reacting from finality, and that raises the real cliffhanger of this chapter. If Andrei's story is marked by pressure, Elizabeth's is marked by quiet endurance, the kind of emotional labor that doesn't make headlines but eats away at a person from the inside. From the beginning, viewers saw her as the steady one, the mediator, the soothing voice that tried to keep the family peace, even when everyone else seemed determined to pick a side. But what the show only hinted at, in clipped confessionals, tired eyes, and a soft tremble in her voice, was how much weight she was carrying alone. In the early seasons, Elizabeth stepped into the role of strong partner naturally. She defended Andrei when her family questioned him. She reassured him when immigration setbacks hit. She stood between him and her siblings during arguments that could have blown up the entire household. It wasn't performative loyalty, it was survival. She believed that if she stayed calm, if she stayed gentle, the storm around them could be held together long enough for everyone to understand each other. But strong partners don't stay strong because they want to. They stay strong because they feel they have to. And over time, that sense of duty transformed into a kind of emotional isolation. Once their daughter arrived, the dynamic shifted again. Elizabeth became the default parent, the primary comfort, the consistent presence. Andrei loved their child deeply. Viewers saw that warmth many times. But Elizabeth often found herself buffering his intensity, smoothing his edges, translating conflicts while still managing a household. The show caught small glimpses of that imbalance. Her juggling work calls while holding the baby, her stepping in to de-escalate arguments, her quiet attempts to lighten the mood when Andrei appeared overwhelmed. Slowly, subtly, the emotional return she needed started shrinking. She would pour out reassurance but receive silence. She would initiate conversations and get only short, clipped answers. She would try to create moments of closeness and run into a wall of fatigue, or worry, or irritation. And once silence replaces connection, a partner begins to panic, not loudly, but internally. Elizabeth's burnout didn't arrive in a single moment. It built in layers. Trying to keep peace between her husband and her siblings, feeling responsible for smoothing every conversation, managing the emotional climate of the home, holding together a public image that no longer matched reality. Absorbing the tension, Andrei couldn't speak out loud. By the time filming caught her breaking down on camera, her panic wasn't about losing her marriage. It was about realizing she had been holding the relationship together alone for longer than she wanted to admit. You could see it in her face when she asked him to talk, when she begged him to explain, when she looked at him with that mix of fear and disbelief. Fear that she had failed, disbelief that he had shut her out so completely. Because somewhere in the silence, she found something. A shift, a truth. A moment that told her he wasn't just overwhelmed. He was stepping away emotionally, and now the compassionate rhythm turns into a suspenseful beat. The moment a relationship becomes part of a show, every conflict shifts. What starts as a private disagreement slowly turns into material the crew needs to capture. And when you watch Andrei and Elizabeth across multiple seasons, you see that slow shift play out. Their marriage became something they had to hold together, not only for each other, but for an audience. They were trying to protect their home life, while production kept searching for tension to build the next episode. Whenever the family gathered for a scene, there was always a spark the cameras hoped to catch. The crew